Ubuntu 26.04 Beta, everything you need to know. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're a Linux user, a developer, or just someone who loves staying ahead of the curve in tech, today's video is made for you. Because Ubuntu just dropped something big. The beta of Ubuntu 26.04 LTS, codenamed Resolute Raccoon, is officially here, and honestly, this might be the most exciting Ubuntu release in years. We're talking a brand new kernel, a completely revamped desktop, system tools rebuilt from scratch for security, and even future-proofing against quantum computers. Let's get into all of it. What is Ubuntu 26.04 and why does it matter? Ubuntu 26.04 LTS was released in beta on 26 March 2026 by Canonical, and the final stable release is planned for 23 April 2026. The LTS part stands for long-term support, which means this isn't just another update, it's the version that millions of users, businesses, schools, and government institutions around the world will rely on for years to come. As an LTS release, Ubuntu 26.04 will receive standard support for 5 years until April 2031, with an additional 5 years available through Ubuntu Pro for a total of 10 years. And with the optional legacy add-on, support can stretch all the way to 12 years. That's a remarkably long runway for any operating system. The codename Resolute Raccoon was chosen by Steve Langsik, a former Debian and Ubuntu release manager who passed away in early 2025. The name reflects determination and unwavering commitment, qualities that are exactly what you'd want in a system millions of people will depend on. And if you're wondering whether this is just a routine update, it absolutely is not. This is described by many in the Linux community as the most significant Ubuntu LTS release since 20.04 Focal Fossa back in 2020. Linux kernel 7.0, a big number with meaning. Ubuntu 26.04 ships with Linux kernel 7.0, a major version bump that reflects a naming tradition rather than a full architectural overhaul. After releasing kernel 6.19, Linus Torvalds announced the next version would be numbered 7.0 instead of 6.20, simply because he prefers to reset the counter when the minor number approaches 20. The same thing happened in transitions from 2.6 to 3.0 and from 5.x to 6.0. So yes, 7.0 sounds dramatic, and it is a meaningful release, but the jump in the number is partly tradition. What matters is what's inside: better support for modern server hardware, including AMD Zen 6 and Intel Nova Lake processors, and a stronger foundation for the years ahead. Gnome 50 and the end of X11 for Gnome. Now let's talk about the desktop experience, because this is where things get really interesting. Ubuntu 26.04 ships with Gnome 50, and for the first time, Gnome runs exclusively on Wayland. X11 sessions for the Gnome desktop are gone, though X-Wayland remains available for legacy applications that still need it. This has been a long time coming. The Linux community has been slowly moving away from X11, the decades-old display server, toward Wayland, which is faster, more secure, and better suited to modern hardware. Ubuntu 26.04 finally makes that move permanent for Gnome users. Gnome 50 also stabilizes features that were previously considered experimental. Variable refresh rate and fractional scaling are now stable and enabled by default, no longer buried behind experimental flags. This is huge for people on high refresh rate monitors or 4K displays who previously had to dig through hidden settings to get things working smoothly. Gnome 50 also picks up a power mode indicator in the top bar, better screen time controls, and fixes for long-standing annoyances like deleted default folders reappearing after a reboot. On the visual side, the desktop gets colorful new folder icons, a fully opaque Ubuntu dock, a fresh default wallpaper, and a new boot spinner animation that refreshes the system startup experience. New default apps, a fresh lineup. Ubuntu 26.04 also swaps out several aging default applications for modern replacements. And this is one of those changes that everyday users will actually notice. Papers replaces Evans as the default PDF viewer. It's built on the same codebase, but updated to GTK4 and partially rewritten in Rust. Loupe replaces Gnome as the default image viewer, also written in Rust. Ptyxis replaces Gnome Terminal as the default terminal emulator. Resources replaces Gnome System Monitor, chosen for its superior accessibility support and cleaner interface. And GIMP gets a major update from version 2.10 to GIMP 3.2. Showtime also replaces the old Totem media player. Ubuntu had been using Totem since 2004, so this is a long overdue refresh that brings a more modern look and feel. The Rust Revolution, rebuilding the core. This is probably the most technically significant aspect of this release, and it deserves its own moment. The sudo command, one of the most critical tools on any Linux system, has been replaced by sudo-rs, a complete rewrite in Rust. Similarly, the new coreutils, which includes essential commands like ls, cp, mv, cat, and rm, are being replaced by Rust-based alternatives through the utils project. Why does this matter? Because C, the language these tools were originally written in, has historically been a major source of security vulnerabilities. Buffer overflows, memory leaks, and use-after-free bugs have plagued software for decades. In many large software projects, over 70% of security vulnerabilities are related to memory safety issues. Rust's compiler prevents entire classes of these bugs before the program even runs. One immediately noticeable change with sudo-rs is that your password now shows asterisks as you type, something traditional sudo never did. For 46 years, typing a sudo password showed nothing at all. This new behavior is actually more intuitive for most users, and if you prefer the old silent input, you can switch it back. The traditional C-based sudo remains available in the repositories as a fallback. So nothing is broken for existing setups. This is a gradual, thoughtful transition. Post-quantum cryptography, protecting your data from the future. This is the part of Ubuntu 26.04 that doesn't get as much attention in headlines, but is arguably the most forward-thinking change in any mainstream operating system right now. Ubuntu 26.04 sets post-quantum cryptography as the default, something almost no mainstream operating system has done before. OpenSSH ships with warnings when a connection uses a non-post-quantum key agreement, and OpenSSL defaults to post-quantum key exchange algorithms out of the box. You might be thinking, quantum computers powerful enough to break today's encryption don't exist yet. So why does this matter now? The answer is what security experts call harvest now, decrypt later attacks. Adversaries can capture encrypted traffic today and decrypt it once quantum hardware becomes available. Sensitive data encrypted in 2026 with classical algorithms could potentially be exposed in 2030 or 2035. OpenSSH uses the hybrid algorithm MLK-EM 768X to 5519 SHA-256, and OpenSSL applies X to 5519 plus MLKM for TLS connections, providing quantum resistance while maintaining backward compatibility with existing systems. This is genuinely ahead of the curve. TPM-backed full disk encryption goes mainstream. Another major security upgrade is that full disk encryption backed by your system's TPM chip, the Trusted Platform Module, graduates from experimental status to a fully supported, production-ready feature in Ubuntu 26.04. In practical terms, this means your encrypted drive is tied to your specific hardware. If someone removes your drive and attempts to read it on a different machine, decryption will fail. Ubuntu 26.04 also adds the ability to set or remove a pin after installation and to re-encrypt a disk directly from the security center without reinstalling the system. What's new for developers and power users? For developers, Ubuntu 26.04 is a powerhouse base. The release ships with Python 3.14 as the new default, along with glib 2.42, LLVM 21, GCC 15, Rust 1.93.1, and OpenJDK 25, making it a strong foundation for development and CI/CD environments. The Package Manager APT also gains new features, including improved auto-completion and new commands like why and why not, designed to help users understand exactly why a certain package is or isn't installed on their system. That's a small but genuinely useful quality of life improvement. On the server and cloud side, Ubuntu 26.04 will be fully supported on AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and Oracle Cloud from day one, as a standard for every LTS release. Flavors and variants. If the standard Gnome desktop isn't your thing, you're covered. The beta includes images for Kubuntu with KDE Plasma, Lubuntu with LXQT, Ubuntu Budgie, Ubuntu Studio, Ubuntu Unity, and Xubuntu alongside the core Ubuntu Desktop, Server, WSL, and cloud products. Lubuntu 26.04 ships with LXQT 2.3.0, Xubuntu 26.04 brings XFCE 4.20.1, and Kubuntu 26.04 arrives with KDE Plasma 6.6. Each flavor carries LTS status and will be supported for the standard time frame, with two exceptions, Ubuntu Mate and Ubuntu Unity, which currently lack enough active developers to maintain LTS commitments. There's also a Raspberry Pi image available, and early reports suggest the Pi build runs better than ever on this release. Should you install the beta right now? Here's the honest answer. It depends on who you are. Production environments should wait for the official release. Beta software can break file managers or require driver tweaks, and it's not meant for critical systems. If you do want to test it, back up your data and try it in a virtual machine first. If you install the beta now, you can upgrade to the final stable release simply by installing software updates as they come. By 23rd April 2026, you have the same core experience as a fresh install. And if you're on Ubuntu 24.04 LTS and things are working fine, the safer path is to wait for the 26.0 4.1 release in August 2026, when the official upgrade route opens and months of post-launch fixes are bundled in. Ubuntu 24.04 continues to receive security updates until April 2029, so there's no urgency to move immediately. So that's Ubuntu 26.04 LTS, Resolute Raccoon, a release that earns the name. Linux kernel 7.0, Gnome 50 fully on Wayland, rust-written system tools, post-quantum cryptography as a default, TPM-backed disk encryption out of the box, a refreshed set of default apps, and up to 12 years of support. This isn't a cosmetic update. This is Ubuntu laying new foundations for the next decade of computing. And it's arriving 23rd April 2026. If you found this helpful, make sure to give the video a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment below. Are you excited about Ubuntu 26.04? Will you be upgrading? Let me know. See you in the next one.